Here's the English translation of your text, keeping the lively, engaging tone, smooth transitions and touch of intrigue intact. The greatest orc warlords of Middle-earth, who they were, what they achieved, and how they met their end. In Tolkien's legendarium, orcs are not just enemies. They are the embodiment of twisted, relentless evil, devoid of even the faintest trace of mercy, honor, or kindness. In most tales, they appear as a faceless horde, driven only by a thirst for destruction. Yet among the countless, nameless warriors, there were those who left a mark on Middle-earth's history. Warlords, commanders, assassins, whose names were remembered even by their foes. Let us recall the most infamous orc leaders from The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, tracing what made them infamous and how their paths ended. Azog the Conqueror, or the Defiler. Azog's name resounded across Middle-earth, especially after Peter Jackson's Hobbit film trilogy, where he became the main antagonist. But even in Tolkien's books, his story is no less dramatic. Azog led the orcs who settled in Moria Khazad-dûm after the dwarves fled, driven out by a Balrog. When the dwarves, led by King Nain II, tried to reclaim their kingdom, a bloody battle broke out at Moria's gates. Azog slew Nain, but was himself killed by the king's son, Dain Ironfoot. In the films, however, he was allowed to survive, only to later face Thorin Oakenshield on the battlefield of the Battle of the Five Armies. Their duel proved fatal for them both. Lurtz never appeared in the books. He was created by the screenwriters of The Lord of the Rings. This Uruk-hai was bred by Saruman as the first and strongest of his kind. He was appointed commander of the Uruk-hai army to hunt down the Fellowship of the Ring. Lurtz earned his place in history with the fatal arrow that pierced Boromir. But his triumph was short-lived. Aragorn avenged Boromir, slaying the Uruk-hai leader in a fierce fight, Ugluk and Mauhur. Unlike Lurtz, these two Uruk-hai leaders were Tolkien's own creations. Ugluk commanded the company, while Mauhur was his second in command. They were tasked by Saruman to capture Merry and Pippin. Ugluk despised other orc tribes, considering the Mordor and Moria orcs weaklings. Their company fought Eomer's riders of Rohan to the last man, ultimately being annihilated, showing fanatical resolve until the very end. Bolg, son of Azog, Bolg commanded the orcs in the Battle of the Five Armies. In the book, it was him, not Ezog. His guard was made up of giant, ferocious orcs who killed Fili and Kylie and mortally wounded Thorin. It was Beorn, in the form of a massive bear, who became his doom, crushing the warlord in the heat of battle. Gothmog. In the books, it's never stated whether Gothmog was an orc or a man, possibly even a black Númenórean. But in the films, he was depicted as an orc, cementing that image. Gothmog led the forces of Minas Morgul. After the Witch King's death, he took command of the army during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. However, Aragorn and his allies turned the tide, and Gothmog fell, the Great Goblin. In Tolkien's legendarium, orcs and goblins are essentially the same. The Great Goblin from The Hobbit was a giant among his kind and ruler of the orcs of the Misty Mountains. When Thorin's company stumbled into his realm, he planned to execute them, but Gandalf's sudden intervention ended his life. Golfimbol. Leader of the northern orcs from Mount Gram, Golfimbol is remembered for once invading the Shire. With the rangers of the north engaged elsewhere, the defence of the hobbits fell to themselves. Pippin's ancestor, Bandobras Took, personally killed Golfimbol, saving his homeland. Bolldog. One of the most ancient orc warlords, Bolldog lived during the First Age. He served Melkor himself and led an assault on the elven realm of Doriath, where Luthien resided. His name is mentioned only briefly, but that brevity shrouds him in grim legend. Middle-earth knew thousands of orcs, but only a few bore names that could instill fear even in the bravest. And though their fates varied, they all ended the same way, in battle, for an orc warlord could meet no other end. The winds of Middle-earth carried for long the echoes of fallen orc leaders' cries across mountains and plains. Yet the story of these creatures did not end with Azog's fall or Lurtz's death. In the dark corners of the world there were always those waiting for their time. Whispers told of a new leader hidden deep within the Morgul dungeons, a twisted offspring of Sauron's sorcery and Melkor's ancient magic. His name was never spoken aloud, but in hushed voices they called him Morgank. He was unlike the others, not merely a warrior but a strategist, one who could command orcs not only through fear, but with promises of glory and plunder. Morgank knew the War of the Ring was over and the Dark Lord defeated. But he saw something else, the world of men, dwarves and elves torn apart by internal strife. This was a time when new shadows could rise. By night he gathered the remnants of scattered warbands. Among them were the last of Bolg's guard, exiled Uruk-hai from Isengard, and half-wild goblins from the northern caves. They followed him because he spoke of a great purpose, to reclaim what the orcs had once possessed. But deep inside, Morgank dreamed of more, to forge them into a new power in Middle-earth, one even Sauron had never commanded. The first raids were cautious, vanished caravans on the Shire's borders, slaughtered merchant camps on the Great Road, burned villages in the foothills of the Misty Mountains. No one knew who was behind it, but rumours spread. People spoke of a tall orc in black armour who laughed as everything around him burned. Meanwhile, in Rivendell, Celebrian, daughter of Elrond, received alarming reports from scouts. On the map before her, small dots marking fires formed a line, one leading straight to the old gates of Moria. If Morgank truly gathered his strength there, the world could face a new onslaught, one to eclipse even the horrors of the Battle of the Five Armies. Somewhere in those same mountains, under the cover of night, in a torchlit cavern, Morgank stood before his assembled horde. His voice was deep and heavy like the beat of a war drum. "We are the last of the great, but we shall be the first in the new world. Men are weak, elves are leaving, and dwarves hide in stone. Our time is near." In response, the caves roared with a sound born of rage, thirst for vengeance, and hunger for war. He raised his blade, a long, curved sword forged by a smith in the days when Melkor defied Valinor itself. The edge caught the torchlight, and in that instant, even the fiercest orcs fell silent. It was a sign. A new chapter in the history of darkness was beginning, and in it the old names, Azog, Bolg, Lurtz, would be mere heralds of the terror to come. If you wish, I can create a continuation where Morgank faces an unexpected foe, not men, not elves, but those the orcs once considered their dark allies. It would add an unforeseen twist and a strong sense of intrigue to the story,